Hi again, this is Professor Innes, and this is going to be your module on the episodes to do with Imagination Land. So you're going to be watching Imagination Land 1, 2 and 3, and for us philosophers we're looking at these in regards to making a distinction between imagination and intellect. So therefore the distinction between what we imagine to be and how we use our imagination and how we use our reason. Now in that respect, where you have the presumption there is a distinction between the two, but as philosophers you've got to think to yourself, right, is there a case whereby imagination is needed to come up with intelligent, therefore reasonable considerations of the world around us? In these episodes we have many instances which you're going to note and look for, whereby it might be the case you actually need to be imaginative to understand what's happening. So imagination therefore leads towards a reasonable thinking. Right, so in that respect the distinction becomes blurred, but us philosophers still like to have the idea that they're distinctly different, and in that respect one has to be very careful about one's imagination, and we do have those references in the cartoons. So for example, the fear of imagination has been prevalent, as the text says, since 9/11. In that sense, we don't like to imagine or use our imagination too much for fear of the repercussions. So in that respect here, we just tend to not to say anything. So we got those references which you're going to look for as well. So it is something which SouthPark is picking on again as being problematic, and again this is a problem. We've got a problem here in the sense of distinguishing between the intellect and imagination, and of course are we allowed to use our imagination? So we've got all those considerations to think about as we're looking at these three different cartoons, which again is Imagination Land 1, 2 and 3. Right, so we've got questions. Now if you go to page 33, when it's clarifying, when it's making an attempt to clarify our understandings of the world be reasonable. Therefore, instead of being too imaginative, I might argue, we need to clarify what it is to do something by use of reason. So if we're talking about war, the first question we've got to ask is, what is war? And then we've got to ask the question, what is a just war? All of these questions are put forward. This is a good old Socratic method way of trying to find out what's happening. And in that happening we put forward a reasonable argument, because we are not generals who just like to go to war. We're philosophers who are first of all trying to define what is a war, and thereafter ask other questions about what is a just war. Now in our present day age we've got this war on terrorism. So that war on terrorism is still afoot. It is apparently becoming more real, because we're now actually fighting people who are terrorists, whereas before it was rather opaque and ambiguous to what this terrorism is, because we had the term war on terror. Now it sounds like we're going to go to war on a concept, so therefore it's similar to saying I'm going to have a war on the colour blue. Because it's very suspicious and we need to go out and sort out this colour blue. So war on terrorism is just as peculiar, as conceptual as saying I've got this war on terror. So we've got this idea put forward that we've got this war on terror, and 5 years ago that would have been a peculiar statement for us, because what is this war? Now it may be because of this group called ISIS, Daesh and all those in particular groups are becoming more obvious, therefore they're materializing themselves as groups who are waging war. Then we've got something more tangible. It sounds more normal, because to have a war we've got to have somebody to go to war with, but the war on terror doesn't indicate that there's somebody out there. So is that a war? And certainly, is it a just war? I mean, are they messing us about? The government having a really trying to mess us about here, but of course not doing a very good job because it sounds silly. What are they up to here? So this is when we've got problems in this consideration of war, just war. What is a war? So we've got all that to think about and consider. So hopefully this short video, has indicated to you what you're going to think about. In the episodes, you got the idea that the government lacks imagination. It's, referring to old concepts of nationalism, and in the cartoons it espouses this idea that the nationalist is one that I don't know, embarks upon these peculiarities of going to war and doing things. And in the cartoon, I'll let you find the particular episode. I'm pretty sure it's the third episode here. It's when the boys get together and they collaborate, this indicating an internationalism. So by this consideration, it seems like what we have is something to consider to be a sensible collaboration. So this is something we can add towards that understanding of what is a war, what is terrorism, what are all these things here, and thereafterwards you've got this understanding of the government lacking imagination, and the boys seem to have that imagination. They're imagining a collaboration. They're imagining a joining together of previous foes. That demands imagination, but it also is reasonable. So that's when we go back to the beginning and start to question: does the reason need the use of imagination? To be an internationalist, therefore join together with other nations to collaborate on particular matters, demands imagination, whereas nationalism tends to hold us back. So hopefully that last bit made sense, because I didn't make the transition very well with that one here, but hopefully that last bit makes sense. And now that is, again, going back to the situation of imagination being necessary for reasonable thought. Okay, so hopefully all of this makes sense. Again, refer to page 33 for the questions, the good old Socratic questions on war. What is war? What is a just war? That's very useful. But overall, just think about that distinction between imagination and reason. Do we need imagination to go into being having reasonable thought here? Can it be of use, or is it something whereby imagination might be seen as detrimental? Or another question, is it seen as not allowed? So we've got all these questions, lots and lots of questions to put forward. Okay, so hopefully this video makes sense. Let me know if these videos are helpful, please, because otherwise I'm going to have to change the format. Maybe just present a formal lecture or something, which I don't want to do. I want to do it for each individual module, for each individual group. So let me know if they are of use, please. Okay, so enjoy the module. Let me know if there are any problems. Let me know if you need anything at all, please. Okay, thanks a lot, and speak to you soon in the journals. Thank you. Oh, and again, let me know if the response I'm giving in the journals is helpful. So to all intents and purposes, it's supposed to be a discussion between me and you. And if that's not happening, let me know, please. Okay, thanks. Speak to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.